Good morning, good afternoon, good everyone, good evening, everyone, depending on where we are connecting from. My name is Alessio D'Antino. I'm the founder and CEO of Forward Fooding, and I'm truly excited to be here virtually, I guess, with you today to celebrate the world's entrepreneurial food tech talent with us. I'm going to go and give you a very brief introduction about Forward Fooding and the FoodTech 500. But then we're going to get into a fireside chat with Barbara from Dole, head of Dole Ventures, and then Andrew Hip from NEOM. Then we're going to give the floor to some top secrets yet, as we basically are unveiling the list today. Founders and C-level executives of some of the top 10 companies of this year's edition. And then we're going to wrap up the sessions with a very brief Q&A session with taking the questions basically from the audience. So I'm going to encourage everyone who wants to basically ask questions during the sessions to basically type them into the group chat. Very briefly about our mission at Forward Fooding is very simple. We foster food innovation to redesign our food system by basically hyper-connecting all the different ecosystem stakeholders, whether are the entrepreneurs, as of today, unmuted, also through all the other ecosystem stakeholders, namely the corporates, the investors, the accelerators, as well as the people who are interested in entering the space. And we do this to really try to help the system, to change by embracing some of the innovations and technologies that are being developed, out there. The way we do it is mainly through free activities. So on the one end, through data and insights, we've developed a data intelligence platform that now counts about 15,000 ecosystem actors across the globe. And again, we use it to understand basically the different connections that occur behind, the ecosystem. Through our scouting, matchmaking, and promotion activities, where we help basically our corporate investor clients to connect with our network of startups and scale-ups. And last but not least, through our startup network, which the FoodTech 500 is a big pillar of it, but also through our physical hubs in London and Barcelona, where we basically host and support selected companies that are basically based within either UK or Spain. But again, today's session is all about the FoodTech 500, and the FoodTech 500 is basically the Fortune 500 of AgriFoodTech. So it's the world's definitive list of the most groundbreaking global businesses at the intersection of food, technology, and sustainability, as we define basically the AgriFoodTech space. And the idea with it is really started in 2019 in our London headquarters, where off the back of an IPO that was completed by a leading company in the plant-based space, we were all wondering, who we're going to be next, right? So instead of guessing it, I guess, we figured that by putting the spotlight on the leading innovators that were creating innovation across the ecosystem from farm to fork, we could have basically helped to create not only raising awareness about some of these innovations, but most and foremost to really understand what were the companies that were likely to be the future IPOs, or future companies that will create a very big impact at the food system level. And so at a glance, as I mentioned, FoodTech 500 has now reached this third edition, from an idea to a fully fledged, ranking that has received over the years about 5,500 applications, which we've screened, all one by one, and reached about 180 countries in terms of, again, audience. And this is also thanks to our media partners, which over the years, again, we've onboarded about 42. To really give, again, visibility to not only reach every single corner of the world, but really give visibility throughout the global ecosystem. The scoring mechanism, really quickly, basically was created again in 2019, and it's based on three main pillars. The first one is the business size score, which is a digital footprint score, which are actually taken from our Food Data Navigator. So they are algorithm led, and they function as a scoring mechanism to create a proxy respectively of the size of the business, so namely the headcounts and offices from which these companies operate from, and the digital footprint score, which is a proxy of the amount of traffic that they're able to generate over their website and how fast they're growing over social media. Then in absence of a framework to measure really sustainability across the supply chain, no matter of the technology that the company was developing, we basically created a bespoke sustainability framework, which was actually developed in partnership with sustainability experts from the academia world, which is based on a self-assessed survey that we asked the companies to basically compile. And again, we wouldn't be able to do the FoodTech 500 without collaborating actually with other organizations. So this is really our key to make this third edition of our listing possible. And so our sponsors, Dole, Sunshine Company, and NEOM are the ones that have sponsored this year's edition. But also our media partners. This year we had about 22 companies that helped us to reach literally every single corner of the world in terms of applications. And also our technical partners, Data Scouts and the University of Turin, who have helped respectively to build part of the intelligence behind our data platform and the sustainability framework that I mentioned earlier. Really quickly on the finalists. So again, this year we have received actually about 2,255 applications specifically from international AgriFoodTech startup and scale-up companies. So I can tell you that it was a big endeavor for us to pick only 500, but that's the number of seats that we had available. We have covered about 85 countries in terms of entries received. And this year we had about 17 companies which either IPO'd or reached the unicorn status. So their valuation is over basically $1 billion. For next year, we already received the 420 applications, which is a really good sign that is set to be another great year in terms of diversity, again, of solution that we can showcase, through the listing. Very briefly at a glance, as I mentioned, we were quite impressed to see also how companies have developed, from 2019 to now, being able to have, about 17 companies that have either IPO'd or reached the unicorn status is something that I think is very indicative of how mature now the space, is and how it evolved, really over time. But as I said, it's a very heterogeneous, group of companies, that goes from very early stage all the way through, very mature. But what I think, is really important to highlight, and at least, what really makes us passionate about keep doing really the FoodTech 500 is the fact that compared to many other techs, we believe that AgriFoodTech is a lot more diverse. And again, last year we started measuring basically the composition of the founding teams or the C-level, execs behind some of these companies. And I'm really glad to see that this year the percentage of diverse teams has actually grown even further. We're talking about 51% of this year list are either female, Black, Asian, minority ethnies, founded, or LGBT, or founders with disability, which I think it's really one of the driving factors of the fact of that is really fostering, this ecosystem to becoming even more and becoming even more inclusive. Again, given that we all started with the idea of figuring out who were going to be the companies who were going to IPO next, this year we have actually taken a step further, and we tried to create a sort of a mechanism that is based on three main indicators to predict basically how many other companies within this year's list we're going to IPO within the 12 or 24 next month. And what we figured basically there, again, by using proprietary data that we had available, is that another 20 companies within this year's 500 are likely to basically IPO within the next 12 or 24 months. And we wrote a little blog about it that has all the data points. So for anyone who's interested in digging deeper into it, I encourage you to go on the blog and see it. And again, I think it reflects what is happening in the market, as this year was another record-breaking year in terms of investment, with about $50.4 billion invested globally, which is an uplift of about 76% compared to last year. But like I said, it's all about unveiling the FoodTech 500. So drum roll, please. This year's top 10 includes a company like Infarm, who made it actually first, Plenty, and Bowery, who all work in the vertical farming space. Then we have Ynsect, that works in the insect protein space, Benson Hill, AgriFoodTech, and Pivot Bio. Imperfect Foods and Too Good To Go as our food waste warriors, and HelloFresh in the food delivery space, and Notco, last but not least, in the alternative protein space. And just some key metrics that we've picked again from our platform to give you a sort of a glimpse into the impact that this company are generating as a cluster of 10. And again, it's just because we're going to hear also from some of them very shortly. They've raised about $4.1 billion to date. They've created more than 20,000 jobs and filed or being granted about more than 210 patents, while operating in over 50 markets to date. So again, this was really the unveiling of only the top 10, but if you go on foodtech500.com or forwardfooding.com/foodtech500, you will be able to see actually all the last free editions of the listing in one basically page. And also through this QR code, you can basically go straight into the listing. But without further ado, again, today we're also unveiling the official white paper and the top ranked companies in next generation food and drinks and ag tech. And then over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be unveiling more vertical focused reports to basically with exclusive content from some of the companies that have top ranked this year into such verticals. And without further ado, let me go into the Fireside chat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and call Barbara. If yes, you're here.
Yes, I'm here. Hello. Hi, Alessio. Thank you.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you for joining us. Barbara comes straight from Singapore, so thanks for taking the time, really. Great. So let me start with a very it's going to be a very informal, fireside chat, but let me start with a very simple questions to just if you can briefly introduce Dole and its mission for everyone who's not familiar basically with the company.
Okay, how long do you have? 3 minutes or 30 minutes?
You have about 10 minutes in total. But
Thank you, Alessio, and thank you for having me here. I'm extremely happy to be supporting the Food 500. So for those who are not familiar, because we might be less familiar to the European market, but for more than 160 years, Dole's mission has been to deliver high quality, fresh and packaged fruits with positive impact on people, planet, and prosperity. We are headquartered in Singapore, and that's why I'm here leading the venturing arm of the group. We have an annual turnover of 2.6 billion USD, exporting in more than 70 countries, US being our first market. But we operate, and that really what makes our job fantastic. We operate more than 50,000 hectares of farms in the Philippines, Thailand, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. And we have 5 manufacturing facilities. So for those who never heard about Dole, I think that's a pretty concise version of what we are doing, and more happy than to be here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Barbara. This is fantastic. And again, we love to partner up with like-minded organizations like Dole, just for the fact that, the impact that, again, some of these technologies that we celebrate also today as part of the entrepreneurial talent, behind them, is where we see that, they can create a very big impact on organizations, like Dole that basically, manage big actors and, big volumes of also producers that you make every year. And I guess, this comes also with great challenges. And I guess, your role, within the organization is a testament of the fact that, you're investing in innovation. Can you tell us what are the main challenges that, Dole is currently facing as a company that is trying to really innovate, within this space?
Well, short term, I think it is not going to be new news to everyone that the main challenges we are facing is inflation and high shipping costs. like most of the company here. But that's certainly not derailing us from our biggest objective, which is to deliver nutrition to 1 billion people by 2025, while reducing our environmental impact on the planet. So that means that we need to create more sustainable agricultural practices. We have a massive challenge in digitalization of our supply chain, while developing a portfolio of products that are accessible, affordable, and acceptable for everyone. We are really aiming to move from being a pineapple in can company to a more health and well-being nutritious food company. For the last 2 years, I think everyone recognized the importance of building more resilient food system while reducing the impact on the planet. So the challenges we're facing are multiple and from different fronts, from the farm to the fork to our consumers. But that's why we are here. We are really ready to embark on the journey with startups and entrepreneurs to co-create together solutions.
That's amazing, Barbara. And again, the fact that, very big organizations are embracing, this type of approaches when it comes to innovation, again, is a testament that the world has changed forever in a way. And we really need to work, on bettering, our food system to really be able, to remain also competitive in the long haul. So that is fantastic, Barbara. Thanks for sharing that. And I remember last year you guys have announced the Dole Promise, right? With its 3 pillars being around nutrition, sustainability, and the creation of shared value. Can you tell us a bit more about this initiative and how are you planning to actually achieve these objectives?
Yes, so we are very simply inspired by the spirit of Sampo Yoshi, which is a philosophy that views that well-being of a society and business are interdependent. So we need to ensure that the business is beneficial to the seller, the buyer, and the community. Back in June 2020, we have introduced our Dole Promise, which is we promise to put the people and the planet at the heart of everything we do to make sunshine brighter for all. And we have 6 promises to give access to sustainable nutrition, decrease food waste, reduce fossil fuel-based packaging, reduce our carbon emission, and grow the value of our companies for both all our stakeholders, which includes the farmers and the shareholders. They are really massive promises. The detail can be found on our website on sunshineforall.com with clear KPIs for each of them. Being carbon neutral by 2030 is one of them, or 100% of renewable energy. But we recognize that we cannot do it alone. And we have created the Sunshine for All Fund to support projects and pilots working with startups and Dole, finding strategic partnership to help us to achieve our mission. And that's very important because it's a new model. We're not here to take equity. We are here to really develop program and pilots where we can create win-win relationship between the two, the corporate and the startup.
That's amazing, Barbara. And again, very ambitious, goals, but with done, in the proper way, as also acknowledging that you probably cannot solve them all, by yourself. So that is great. And again, in the spirit of innovation and kind of trying to forecast what is ahead of us, right? What do you hope to see in the next, let's say, 20 to 50 years in the fields of AgriFoodTech innovation for sustainability and beyond? As you mentioned, also, that is at the core of what you guys are doing.
It's a very difficult question to answer because we are looking at agri and food tech from the farm to the fork. So we are really looking at technology that can actually help us to develop effective and scalable solution on carbon capture, technology that can help us to at scale digitalize the relationship with our smallholder farmers and our farming activities. But we will also be looking at non-fossil fuel-based packaging. There is already a solution today. They are not yet either affordable or suitable for our own process today. So it's very vast. I'll be also looking from an agricultural point of view on solution and technology that can really take care seriously of Fusarium and TR4, which are damaging all plantation. And that's not only Dole, it's everyone in the production of bananas. So it's really broad, and it's difficult to summarize it. We've tried to list down a couple of things that we are really looking at and hoping to see happening in the next 15 years, but 50 years. But I think overall it's to finally build a more circular and resilient system, and I would say ecosystem of our food supply chain. Again, it has to be all together, not just corporate and startup, but it's corporate, and startups. It's all together, including as well the consumers.
Amazing, Barbara. And again, I think in this virtual room, you have a few also folks that can help you, support you, in taking this mission further. So that is great. And coming to the FoodTech 500, you mentioned earlier that you envision, a very fruitful, relationship between corporates and startups, right? So first, I just wanted to ask you, what made you decide to actually get behind, this year's list? And how do you envision, the role of partnerships and collaborations to play in creating a more resilient and sustainable food system, and again, in the foreseeable future?
First of all, I'm a huge believer of partnerships and collaboration between corporate and startups. I think they are essential today into all innovation processes. We can see that today it is actually a little bit more commonplace than 7 years ago, when I started this journey, when I was at Unilever, building Unilever Foundry here in Asia. So I think the journey needs to continue, and I'm glad to see more and more corporates and more startups collaborating. What we can bring is access to markets, scale, it's leadership and the willingness to change things. But startups have massive ideas, huge agility, and access to technology. So I think I'm actually, that's why I'm here, and I wanted to support Forward Fooding here. It's really to have access to those startups and entrepreneurs. Shout out that, that's what we are looking for. I also appreciate that your organization is very much focusing on food and agri-tech. So I'm really looking forward to not reinvent the wheel internally, but build win-win partnership with startups and entrepreneurs to create better food systems. So very much happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Amazing, Barbara. Thank you very much also for taking the time, knowing the time in Singapore. And
I'm used to it.
I know. Fantastic. We're going to move to Andrew. Thanks again, Barbara. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
Andrew Hip, Head of Technology and Innovation for the food sector at NEOM. Andrew, are you with us?
Good day, Alessio. Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And again, good afternoon, actually, because you're also ahead of us.
And to you too.
Fantastic. So for anyone who doesn't know about NEOM, which is a really exciting project that we got to know actually back in 2019, can you please introduce NEOM's vision and what is all really about, and specifically, when it comes to AgriFoodTech, what is your vision of the future?
No, absolutely. Well, Alessio, for those who don't know, NEOM actually is a neologism that means new future. And of course, unlike Barbara's company, who has been around for over 160 years, we are relatively young by that scale. 5-6 years, I would say, when it was first announced in 2017, where the NEOM company that I work for is the custodian company of a region in northwest of Saudi Arabia, being built from the ground up as an accelerator of human progress and a vision of what a new future might look like. Thinking about NEOM, the size of what we like to call Belgium in land size, we are rethinking the way of how we can actually do things across sectors and industries in areas like energy, mobility, water, and of course, today we're talking about food, and that's a sector that I work for. The aim of NEOM is really to think about how we can create an exceptional livability where we are highly self-sufficient in food supply while preserving our precious planet's resources and tackling climate change challenges. It's both about the people and the planet. My role at the food sector really looking after and nourishing an infant innovation ecosystem is to really look at, as Barbara said, these are some very universal themes here, how to better integrate the corporate and the startups, and to really look at how NEOM, what NEOM can do for you, all the startups out there listening, and to really explore and co-create not just the solutions, but we actually have a whole new land that we are actually creating and setting up and really build this environment that can be ripe for innovations at the stages where it can add best value for thinking about how we can secure a food future for the region and beyond. Our vision is very simple: to build a global community with food at its heart, leveraging innovation to nourish both people and the planet. So if you are into these things, NEOM is your best friend in the Middle East, and we can do this together.
Fantastic, Andrew. This is amazing. Again, encompassing also such a big vision, in such a short period of time. I know it's a big challenge, but you did an amazing job at bringing it to life. What really NEOM's, I guess, aspirations is really. And you touched briefly on the fact that you guys are working on some key cross-cutting, teams in the designing and the development of the city, right? Such as smart city sustainability, and most and foremost, human-centered design. Can you explain why they're really important for the Middle East and how they actually interact with one another within NEOM's vision?
Well, absolutely, Alessio. Well, before I jump into those keywords, I definitely want to touch a little bit on what we are talking about when we are talking about building a food system. We are talking about both key focus industries that we see huge opportunities in the Middle East that NEOM can champion or can nourish, and at the same time really setting up the enablers that we can do so. In terms of the key industries, think about climate smart or climate proof agriculture, right? I mean, we are talking about we are growing food for self-sufficiency in the middle of a desert, quite literally, right next to the Red Sea. You can imagine the challenge. It's not just like any other challenges that other food companies might face in the world. And what does that mean for us to do that effectively? So this is a key area. And I will relate to some challenge areas later on so that the startups can have some food for thought and think about if they are working in those areas that they can get in touch. Other areas also include biotech enabled sustainable aquaculture, leveraging our Red Sea advantage, and generally a lower consumption of seafood across the region. How can we capture that market and enable that market, right? Other things that we're looking into also alternative proteins and novel foods from its manufacturing and export perspective, thinking about data-driven personalized nutrition further downstream in the food value chain, thinking about how we can actually create sustainable food supplies in NEOM, and last but not least, really rethinking how regulations and policy can actually enable technologists and innovators like yourselves on the call can flourish in frontier areas with NEOM as your sandbox, especially with a view into the largest Middle East market, right? Ex-Turkey in the Gulf countries, namely Saudi Arabia. So these are all very exciting things that we do. Now, let me relate a little bit to those cross-cutting themes. When you talk about smart city, I actually want to correct you, Alessio. We don't talk about smart city in NEOM. We talk about cognitive city. We talk about the leverage of data. We talk about data ownership at a very granular level across industries and also for every citizens and visitor. So thinking about the cognitive city infrastructure and actually how we can create food system leveraging this infrastructure that we are building from the ground up, I find this extremely exciting opportunity, especially for digital technologies like myself. And of course, you can immediately think about a lot of implications in control, environment, agriculture, in large-scale deployments of IoT sensors and the leveraging of big data for effective balancing of supply and demand and also production, right? Another thing that would be very interesting is really having this data, of course, well curated with privacy and data rights well preserved and prescribed. And how can we actually leverage this to understand citizens' behavior better? How can we actually help people to best leverage this data in building this community of food together, right? Extremely interesting. This go beyond food. It goes into health. It goes into environment and nature preservation. So very important themes. Another two themes that you mentioned, sustainability and human-centered design. I find them they go really hand in hand. When we talk about sustainability at NEOM, from my perspective as a technologist in the food sector, I see it as sustainable development. I see it as a way where we can actually add value to nature by actually developing nature through circular food design. Because like things are still quite new and early stage at NEOM, we really have an opportunity to build things from the ground up, leveraging circular design principles. So it's not like something that you need to think about, or how do we retrofit to legacy system or framework or for policies or infrastructure? No. We are a greenfield project. How can we build this together? And that's why in the beginning, I was saying that startups, we are not just co-creating solutions together. We are actually building the environment where these solutions can flourish. And I find this quite a unique experience and also quite frankly, a unique opportunity for startups around the world to actually play with NEOM in this unique context. And of course, the heart of this is livability. The heart of this is the future citizens. The heart of this is human-centered design, and that's why I feel that I'm glad that you mentioned this. This is very important.
That's amazing, Andrew. And again, for some of you on the call, it may sound like futuristic, but it's actually happening. And again, we were lucky enough, to get to know Andrew back in 2019, where I guess, it started the whole designing and development of the city, really. But again, if any of you has any questions, for as we go through the session, please feel free to type them into the chat, also for Andrew and Barbara, and then we'll try to basically address them at the very end of the session. But Andrew, you mentioned that, well, you're sponsoring into the FoodTech 500 for the second year in a row, and you mentioned that, quite a lot of progress, have been made at NEOM. You guys have been working really hard to build, these environments also, and sandbox, to engage also with startups. Can you talk us through, some of the progress that you guys have made since you started really the project, and what is cooking up, for the years ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you understand that the NEOM is a very multifaceted project. I can relate to some of those things that are already publicly announced. And of course, I can give you an insider scoop, especially on what would be most relevant to the startups in this co-creative process. Well, you must have seen the launch of the line some months back. It's a new urban development concept, and thinking about how the future of living could look like in a place like NEOM, and how we can actually define things from the ground up in a modular sense, and in a way that is fit for the future living. A very, very interesting linear urban design concept. A second, more relevant to really the entrepreneurs on the call would be the Octagon concept. So Octagon is the reimagined city of manufacturing at NEOM, really thinking about how we bring different industries together and create this ecosystem where we have the convenience of logistics and state-of-the-art ports. And well, you can watch the launch video that will tell you all about it. But what I'm really interested in is really about the cross-pollination across industries, and food is one of those key industry that will be located at Octagon along with others. And so those kind of concepts I find very enticing and exciting from an infrastructure development point of view. But of course, for a lot of startups here, I guess the question is really like, what can I do now, and how can I interact with NEOM, right? And what I would really say is that we are curating a community as was the intent of sponsoring FoodTech 500 from last year. It's really to learn about your challenges and to really build this place that is fit for the future of entrepreneurs. And so I have very high hope that this year we can have more community engagements through Alessio and team's hard work, and to really bring these communities together and understand, if you're interested in the Middle East, what can NEOM do for you? And of course, going beyond that, I want to throw you something that you can really chew on, because we have defined a set of challenges that is very relevant for this year that we are ready to collaborate on. So specifically, thinking about production technologies in extreme environment, especially with a view on water use efficiency in food production is absolutely key. Well, we're in the desert after all, and really thinking about in the food value chain and further downstream from a customer perspective, waste and loss. You might have heard about waste and loss problems that are actually very prominent in the Middle East. I guess I'm kind of like alluding to Too Good To Go and friends on the list. If you are very successful elsewhere, I think that you can demonstrate your worth by actually cracking the nut that is yet to be cracked, which is food waste and loss challenges in the Middle East from various angles: cultural, logistics, and consumer behavior. Like there are just so many things that I believe that the world has not yet looked at, especially from a Middle East perspective, that is actually huge opportunities for you. And so I call on to startups to look into these problems. I don't imagine that you just copy paste a solution and it will work here. It will not, I assure you. And that's why we are still waiting for very meaningful co-creation here to address Middle East specific challenges. I also want to point to consumer preferences in health and sustainability diets. These are new trends that are actually up and coming. You know, the Middle East, especially in Saudi Arabia, has been developing very rapidly in the past decade. I've been spending over a decade here in Saudi Arabia, and I can attest to that progress. And how do we actually have the market research and this consumer interaction design to actually match this progress and liberalization? I see huge opportunities there that we can co-create together. And last but not least, of course, top in everyone's mind, thinking about traceability across food value chain, across boundaries and domains in the world to improve efficiency and effectiveness, and really gather that data we can leverage for building a more inclusive food system. This is what NEOM is all about. And if you have ideas that you are willing to explore in the Middle East market, again, all ears.
Fantastic, Andrew. Thanks a lot, really, for taking the time to join us today and sharing NEOM's vision. We really appreciate it. We're going to move on now to the stars, really, of the webinars, who are basically the companies that have made it into this year's top 10. We wish we had time to basically take them all, but unfortunately we had to make a selection as time was the constraint we had. So today we're going to be hearing from Suds from Infarm, Alain from Ynsect, Matt from Benson Hill, Darren from Bowery, Jammie from Too Good To Go, and last but not least, Matías from Notco, who, as I mentioned earlier, are this year's some of the top 10 companies that have made it into this year's listing. And so let me, with the help of my team, I'm going to ask basically Suds to unmute. Is there? Fantastic. So Suds, the floor is yours. I'm gonna, if again, just to bring up the knowledge of everyone. Can you tell us what Infarm does and explain us in the simplest terms you could possibly think of, what your technology is all about?
By absolutely. Thanks for this, Alessio, and remarkable congruence with a lot of stuff said already by Andrew at NEOM. So Infarm's mission as a purpose-driven company is to create a global network of urban indoor farms for people and for planet. And these are all modular farms, and they're cloud connected so that the growing system learns, and the more we grow, therefore, the better we grow. So we are currently set up across 11 countries, and we have about 1,800 points of distribution. And we partner with leading retailers around the world in terms of getting our produce to the end consumer. So we grow about 75 different crops, and this portfolio is growing rapidly beyond the leafy greens and the salads to include mushrooms and fruiting crops like tomatoes, strawberries, peas. Our farms, we were talking about it being modular, and this allows us not just to have large farms where we have what we call our growing centers, but also we can resize them to be what we call the in-store farm. So we can actually have the farms inside the supermarket aisle. And we have hundreds of these live now across Japan, Western Europe, and North America. So the consumer actually sees vertical farming happening in front of them. The produce is harvested in front of them and they take it home with roots and all. So this is really bringing vertical farming right to the consumer at the sale point. The larger modular farms can grow about 500,000 crops in a year in just 40 square meters of space. Now, the cloud connection is really important here because this allows for rapid expansion. It's a plug-and-play system, literally, and the AI system continues to learn as plants grow across the world. So that's sort of at the technology level. Do you want me to move into the challenges and the impacts?
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually, Suds. If you can just expand a bit on the challenge that your solution is addressing and the type of impact that you want to create, you know, at the food system level. These, you know, as I mentioned earlier, are, you know, very quick, sort of like 5 minutes, you know, chat that we're going to have with the companies, but we try really to understand, you know, what is the impact of the solution, you know, can create at the food system level. So if you elaborate on that, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Just 3 very quick points. The first is that the current food system cannot meet the needs of the growing urban population in terms of where it's going. So to put it into context, and Wageningen University sort of encapsulated it, that we need to grow more food in the next 40 years than we've grown in the last 8,000 years. And if we continue to try and grow that food, we just don't have the resources on this one planet. So this whole modularity about controlled environment agriculture and specifically vertical farming, these are critical aspects and allow for a sustainable way to grow food. The second is the unsustainability of it in terms of how it's grown currently. So the way that it's grown currently, you're talking about 20% plus of all emissions coming from agriculture. Most of the water, fresh water as we know it, diverted for agricultural purposes, land degradation, deforestation. In contrast, we're talking about vertical farming taking 95% less land, 95% less water, no chemical pesticides. So there is a dramatic difference in the way it treads on the planet. And the third is just the vulnerability and the inflexibility of the supply chains, which basically means that these are long. So they have increased emissions of transportations, vulnerability of supply, and then the food needs, you know, loses nutrition and flavor. As compared to where you're talking about the impact of controlled environment and specifically vertical farming, you're talking about growing where the people are. So you're talking about urban, in which case you can shorten the supply chain and create what we call climate machines, because you're basically creating the perfect climate for any one particular type of crop.
Amazing, Suds. Thanks a lot for sharing this. And in the next minute or so that we have left, can you just tell us some of the most exciting projects without sharing, you know, anything that is confidential?
Sure.
Or your future plans and latest projects that you guys have been working on?
Of course. Okay. So we are currently in Japan, Western Europe, and North America. And in North America, this is a very big focus of ours. We're already across Canada, but the big new projects is really the expansion in the US. So in addition to our Seattle hub, we've just announced our Texas hub, and there's going to be the 5 that basically follow. So North America is a very big focus for us as we grow. The second is the ambition to grow the whole food and vegetable basket by 2030. So we're partnering with Wageningen University on research and development. That's a very big part. And we are expanding to 100 centers by 2030. And on the impact front, and this is really important because ultimately as a purpose-driven company, we are going through the B Corp process. So it's a holistic approach to sustainability. And then the second is that we are amongst the first, at least in the vertical farming industry, to commit to the SBTI, which is the Science Based Targets Initiative, their framework for a net zero future. And we are defining those targets by the end of 2022.
Amazing, Suds. Thanks a lot for joining us and taking the time. We really appreciate your time. And then again, for anyone who has additional questions, for the sake of time, we need to cut it really short, unfortunately, but please type them into the chat and we'll try to take them at the very end. So moving on and now to Alain from Ynsect. Alain, are you with me? Yes, I can see you there.
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear loud and clear, Alain. Thanks a lot again.
The company Ynsect to start.
Ynsect, sorry, yeah.
It's like an insect.
I always get confused from the Y, but you're right. Sorry, apologies for misspelling it. So, can you please again describe? You work in the insect space. Can you please describe, what the Ynsect does and the main technology behind it?
So, Ynsect is basically reinventing the food chain. We produce high quality, high premium alternative proteins for pretty much every industry you can think of. We started with animal nutrition. We moved on to animal health. Added, human food and human health, and so the spectrum is extraordinarily large of all the applications that our protein and other products, that we produce can address. We produce also a fertilizer, one of the top fertilizers, organic fertilizers in the world for the agriculture industry. So we address basically every diet, whether you're a carnivore or whether you're a vegetarian or vegan or a flexitarian. We produce every type of protein that you would need. And we have 3 plants, to date, 2 that we've been operating for the last 5 years, one in Holland, one in France, and then we're building the largest insect protein plant in the world, an hour north of Paris, that will be up and running at the end of the year.
Amazing, that's fantastic, Alain. Thanks for sharing that. And can you expand a bit on the challenges that you guys are tackling with your solution? And
well, I mean, our luck was to be able to just go second right after Suds, because obviously he explained what the challenges are. We need to produce 70% more food by 2050. That includes obviously protein, and it's the hardest food to produce. It's the more intensive in all the resources that we have, or perhaps we could say that we don't have anymore. So we need 98% less land, 50% less resources to produce this high quality protein. The protein also has incredible properties. It increases the yield, by up to 35% in farms. It reduces the mortality of animals by 40%. It has incredible, nutritional and organoleptic, properties. It reduces cholesterol by 65%, reduces lipids by 35%. I mean, it has an incredible impact on, any animal or any, mammal that actually consumes it. So essentially the challenge is we need to produce more food, but there's only 5% extra available land, on this planet. So there's just no other alternative than to actually build, controlled environment agriculture and to basically produce protein, plants, and fertilizer for the world to thrive and survive.
Great, Alain, thanks a lot. Lots of numbers there, but the right ones to share, absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit more about your latest projects and future projects, again, without sharing too much confidential stuff?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a solution. Our solution is needed all over the world. It's needed in the US. It's needed in South America, in Asia. It's already in Europe. And so we are actually expanding, in North America. We are obviously looking to partner with very, very large companies that understand this challenge and want to meet it with us. We've been, as Suds mentioned earlier, we've been at the forefront of climate change and food insecurity. And so, we basically are looking to build, our solution, our vertical farms in North America, initially, and then in the rest of the world.
Amazing. And in the last minute we have left, Alain, I know that you guys have acquired a company called Infarm, was also based in the Netherlands and was sort of a competitor, I guess. Can you tell us, I guess, as you expand, internationally, what would be the most strategic market, to bring, new products next, and how are you going to leverage, this type of acquisitions that you guys have started, doing to do so?
Yeah, the sector, the market is so large. There are no competitors. I'm not competing with Suds. I'm not competing with ProtiFarm or any other of those players, because the need is so great. The urgency is so great that we are all, trying to, avoid, a catastrophic, situation in the next 30 years. So the reality is, we're a platform, and we're happy to join forces with whoever wants to actually meet those challenges. As I said, we're building, in North America, where the market is booming and is in dire need of alternative protein solutions. But also, we're bringing climate change and insecurity and food insecurity to the forefront and to the heart of the discussion. By actually creating a system which is sequestering more carbon than it emits. By basically bringing concepts such as net zero, the SBTI, the IPCC, and the GIEC, standards and metrics, by basically doing life cycle analysis, of our production and of our supply chain, and by being able to just, claim, to not only just be neutral, but actually sequester more carbon than we emit. You actually create a completely new dynamic, into the discussion of how do we actually feed the world, but also, help and heal the planet.
That's fantastic, Alain. I guess you couldn't describe it better. These things, go hand in hand. And I think, again, the FoodTech 500 is a testament of that. The fact that, you guys and many other companies who made it, are doing good while doing good to the planet, right? Which is the whole point, I guess, of reversing how we got into so much trouble, with our food system. Again, thanks a lot for taking the time, Alain. We really appreciate it. We're now going to move to Matt from Benson Hill, who's actually joining us. We're going to the opposite side of the world. Matt, are you with us? Yes.
I'm here. Yes. Hey, Alessio.
Thanks again, Matt, for joining us. And to you as well, can you tell us a bit more about Benson Hill, which is also one of the company who have, who went public and is part of this year's FoodTech 500, and the main basically functions behind your technology?
Yeah, sure thing, Alessio. So Benson Hill is a food tech company. So we're really serving and positioned well to serve as the picks and shovels of the plant-based movement. Principally with the goals of improving nutrition and sustainability. And we do it in two ways. One is a technology-oriented approach. We are a food tech company, and our food innovation engine we call Crop OS, short for Crop Operating System. And it really sits at this convergence of plant science and data science and food science. And what we do is we're breeding for better seed. And then from those seed come better food and ingredients. And when we say better, we mean more nutritious, more sustainable, very importantly, more affordable. And then the other part of our approach here is an integrated business model. And so we work from that seed innovation all the way through the agri-food value chain to food manufacturing, producing a sustainable but also traceable solution that incorporates everything from regenerative agriculture practices to actually disintermediating some of the processing that would traditionally be required, such that we can not only produce food and ingredient products that are more sustainable, but as I mentioned before, that also pull cost out of the system.
Amazing, Matt. That's fantastic. So it really is a full-fledged, solution, which is also integrated from a business model perspective. And as you are tackling basically different parts of also the food system, right? Can you tell us a bit more about the challenges that you guys have, encountered, building the company, but also, addressing with your solution, and the impact you envision to create at the food system level?
Sure. So I mean, we've been really good at producing cheap calories at scale, and we're great at it. But when you focus on quantity and not also quality, that also creates some challenges. I mean, in the United States today, we spend more on healthcare for diet-related diseases like obesity and type 2 diabetes than we do on all of the food every year itself. The modern food system, I think a lot of us, as has been discussed here today, are coming to appreciate, accounts for a tremendous amount of environmental intensity. I mean, it's estimated 2 tons each person each year. The food that we eat produces about 2 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. And the consumers recognizing this, right? We all appreciate that in the face of what is now 10 to 15% inflation in food and products like meat and fish and eggs, due to supply chain disruptions, we've become not only more cognizant of how much we're paying, but what we're eating and where it comes from. And millennials and Gen Zers are really driving that, showing that I think the data recently say more than half of the consumers in those age brackets are beginning to incorporate plant-based foods in their diet. So there's a flexitarianism that's really coming out globally. And these are the types of trends that we feel we're really positioned to help food companies satisfy, namely by Benson Hill focusing on soy and yellow pea, soy, the most prevalent alternative plant-based food ingredient, yellow pea, the fastest growing, and unlocking this natural genetic diversity of those crops, oftentimes restoring attributes that were once there, like protein and nutrition density, that we've in some respects bred away from because we've been so focused on yield and carbohydrate output. And then ultimately, as I mentioned, delivering those protein ingredients to help satisfy these emergent consumer demands for not just more healthy, but more environmentally friendly food choices is a cornerstone of how we're solving these problems.
Amazing, Matt. Again, in such a short period of time, I think you couldn't put it in better words. So let me just get you to the very last question. Can you tell us a bit more about your latest exciting projects you're working on and also future plans for the company?
Yeah, sure thing. So, the number one priority for Benson Hill right now is what we call ultra high protein soy. So we saw data in 2020 that led us to accelerate this opportunity to produce ultra high protein soy. And last year in 2021, we more than doubled our proprietary soy acres with our farmer partners in North America to over 70,000 acres of proprietary soy that we contracted to plant to ultimately become, these soy-based protein ingredients. Last week, we launched our TruVail portfolio of soy-based protein ingredients capable of eliminating this very expensive and water and energy intensive step called soy protein concentrate. It requires 70% less water, emits 50% less CO2 than SPC production. And then because we're integrated into the supply chain through as well to significant milestones, the acquisition of our recent Creston, Iowa facility and our Seymour, Indiana facility last fall, we can now not only work with farmers to produce those crops, but we can process them into these more sustainable food grade ingredients and look at markets, not just plant-based meat alternatives, but now with our recent acquisition, baked goods, snacks, meat extensions. In addition to that, we're focused on our Very Brain cooking oil, which is a high oleic, low linolenic, non-GMO soy oil. And then recently, we also announced a partnership with Revah, which is I believe the largest trout producer in North America, to produce for them premium soy ingredients that are also more sustainable to put into their aquaculture system. So there's a range of product opportunity areas in soy, and then on top of that, coming down the pike in the future, we'll talk a lot more about yellow pea, which we also find super exciting.
That's awesome, Matt. Thanks a lot again also for taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, so we really appreciate your time. Fantastic. Yeah. Let's move on now to Darren, to Bowery. We stay on that side of the world. Darren, are you with us?
Yes, Alessio, how are you?
Amazing. Yeah, very well. Yourself?
I'm quite well, thank you.
Fantastic. So Darren from Bowery, to level up the knowledge, can you also give us a very brief, let's say 1 minute, pitch about what Bowery does? And then we jump straight into the challenges that you guys are tackling. So you can also combine the two questions if you like.
And I'm going to try to avoid repeating what some of the previous panelists have said, because I think we all recognize the magnitude of the challenge. I also think this entire panel probably recognizes the fact that it will require many solutions to close the gap that folks have articulated in terms of the difference between the demand for food and the current production capabilities of food, and more importantly, thinking about the nutritional value of food versus where we are today. And so there'll be lots of technologies, I think, that will be brought to bear on this solution. Bowery specifically, I would describe as a sort of the master integrator of bringing all of those, a wide range of technologies to bear on trying to solve the food issue from really from end to end. So thinking about it less from the perspective of, can we grow it? Is that necessary and sufficient? The answer is it's necessary, it's not sufficient. To really solve the end-to-end supply chain challenges, you need to approach the problem from the perspective of, for example, the grocer customer, and thinking through how do you transform the way that they source product from where the current system today, where they're importing 30% from overseas of all the vegetables that are consumed in the United States. Almost 60% of all the fruit that's consumed in the United States is actually imported from overseas. And if you look at the map in terms of where the points of consumption are for these products, even within the United States, there's an average of 1,500 to 2,000 miles of travel, multiple players in the supply chain that are involved in bringing that product to market, which introduces latency, which introduces cost, which introduces risk, and introduces volatility and uncertainty as far as the consumer and the customer are concerned. And so Bowery's trying to solve that entire end-to-end supply chain problem through its proprietary network of farms. And I say the word farms to mean not just the growing part of farms, but everything related to the distribution of product. Grow it locally, support the customers at a very high level of service. And do that primarily through the use of our technology platform. And so Bowery is at present the largest in terms of the vertical farming companies in the US, with about 1,000 points of distribution just in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast region.
Wow, Darren, thanks a lot also for jumping straight into, and piggybacking on the other points that were made from the other speakers. I love that. So can you tell us, as we cover basically the basics of the tech and the challenges you're affecting, can you tell us a bit more about the future plans that you guys have, again, without sharing anything too confidential?
No, there's nothing. There's nothing confidential. At least we might think it's confidential, but I think a lot of these moves have been, at least on the part of Bowery, have been pretty well telegraphed here. We have at our core in our mission statement, democratize access to healthy, fresh food. And so that means serving the consumer where he or she lives at a price point that allows them access to our product. And so we work very carefully with our grocer customers, some of the largest in the country. We distribute currently through Whole Foods, through Walmart, through Giant of Landover, through the various Albertson banners and a number of other chains, to help them to support their customer needs, in particular during a period of time when COVID has really dramatically, I won't say interrupted, but highlighted some of the weaknesses in the existing supply chain. And so our current plans are, we've sort of talked about this, we have a very large facility open in Baltimore. We're opening a similar size facility in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is an interesting case in that we repurposed land that was formerly owned by Bethlehem Steel. So non-arable land converted to farmland, which is obviously a very important environmental consideration. We'll be opening farms in Atlanta, just outside of Atlanta, and in Arlington, Texas, just outside of Dallas as well this year, with a number of farms also planned for 2023 opening. One of the things I'd say, Alessio, that's I think been our focus from the beginning, and I can say this from the CFO seat, which is kind of where I live, is there actually have been, if you look at the long history of vertical farming, there have been companies, less successful companies, I'd say, that have popped up and disappeared over the last 10 to 15 years. And obviously the economics proposition is improved materially because of the challenges of outdoor growing, but also the efficiency of LED lighting systems. But we focused very early on understanding the economic side of this business. And that's something we want to drive into the marketplace going forward, because in order to continue to attract the type of capital that's necessary to solve these big problems, you can't have it be, all story and no results. And so one of the things we're intensely focused on is delivering financial results, which, prove out the concept in an indisputable way, which allows us to attract capital and continue to expand the footprint of our business.
Amazing, Darren. And this gives me a great segue into asking your opinion really on how do you envision, all the kind of raising, concerns that also investors have posed on the scalability of some of this technology through basically some of the, activities that you alluded to, earlier. What is your view on this matter? And as a company, how do you react to these kind of concerns? Also, given your CFO,
Yeah, one of the things another thing we recognize really, this is a long journey, right? This is not. We are in the very early innings, to use a baseball metaphor, of what this industry will be. And in order to create the value longer term, you need to be laying down investments in areas that are going to produce results 5, 10, maybe 15 years down the road. So very, very long dated. And at the same time, you have to be essentially earning your keep in terms of improving the economics of the things you are growing in real time, with a clear objective of becoming profitable. And so what we've, I think, found is try to find the right balance between those two sets of activities that allows you to be attractive to a variety of types of investors. Increasingly, ESG and focused investors have become really a bulwark here in terms of interests in this industry, as well as hyper growth sort of technology oriented investors. And so you have to find a way to sort of thread that needle between those two competing interests of sort of hyper growth and sort of solid economics underlying your business soon. And I think we are pretty close to solving that problem. I think some of the others on this panel have solved that, are starting to solve that problem. But it's a business in a very, very early stages. And so that means less predictability than you would like. That means finding the right types of patient capital that understand the challenges of building an industry really from a clean sheet of paper, and that it's going to be a long journey with variability, volatility around it. I think part of that is sort of matching up sort of your investor base with a realistic view of how exciting this play is and from an investor perspective, but also how steep the innovation curve is going to continue to be for a very long period of time.
That's amazing, Darren. And again, I think it gives me a lot of comfort that, as we've seen it also happening in other industries, right? Patience it pays off, in the long haul. But of course, it's something that also investors, I guess, need to be educated about. As you said, there's a long tail game that allows basically the technology to then reach that level of maturity where, it can solve some of these issues. Darren, again.
Let me make one other point, Alessio, which is one of the things we're very, very focused on is what's happening in outdoor agriculture. And so, it's easy to say we're competitors with Infarm or a number of these other companies. The reality is we're not. We're competitors with the field. We're all trying to find a better path here. And the economics of growing outdoors are challenging and becoming increasingly more challenging. And that's around some of the scarcity issues that folks talk about, the real cost of water, the real cost of pesticide use, et cetera. It's also about the rising cost of farmland that exists, basically because there's scarcity value in it. And so outdoor agriculture is going to become more economically challenging over time, whereas we're in the early innings of doing what we're doing. And this is an important dynamic to understand, which is that this was a hope and a dream, I think, 10 years ago, and now it's very much reality. And I think the marketplace recognizes that.
Amazing, Darren. Thanks a lot also for this note. I think it's really important to also embrace the fact that nature is also, part of our challenges. So thanks. I really appreciate you making also this point and taking the time for joining us today.
Great. Thanks, Alessio.
Thanks a lot, Darren. We're moving to the UK with Jammie from Too Good To Go, a longtime friend. Hi, Jammie. Are you with us?
Hey, Alessio, how's things?
Here we go. Very good, very good. Good to see you back here on the screen today. So jumping straight into Too Good To Go, also for you, can you just tell us really quickly, what Too Good To Go is all about, and tell us about the challenges that you're affecting with your solution and you're tackling actually really with your solution.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be back, and it's great to be back with the top 10. It's no, thanks very much for inviting us. But yes, here at Too Good To Go, we're similar, I guess, in terms of many of the organizations that have spoken today, in that we're mission driven. We are a different type of company which puts our social purpose, our environmental purpose ahead of all else. So we are a B Corp. We are a social impact company that tackles food waste. And we are now active across 2 continents in 17 markets across North America and Europe. And what essentially we do is we have a platform which connects individuals with businesses who have surplus food for sale. You'll probably get bored of me talking about this a lot, but I use the word simplicity over and over again. And this is what we are trying to do. We address complex issues, which is the complex issue of our broken food system, with creating simple solutions. So it's a simple platform which allows people to rescue a surprise bag of food from a food business during a allotted collection window. And this is really at the heart of what it is we're trying to do, which is about empowering people, empowering businesses, empowering individuals to take action against food waste.
That's amazing, Jammie. And again, I'm going to jump straight into, I guess, some of the journey now that, you guys have gone through in rescuing, food waste since 2015. It started with Europe, then you entered North America, market. Can you actually tell us, as I know some of the latest speakers, really big in terms of also meals rescued. Can you tell us how do you also measure impact, when it comes to, the company, and in particular, where the impact how these impact metrics have changed over the years as you were, North Euro, UK, and then now, also taking
yes.
down to a whole different new ball game.
Well, in terms of our business, we've always measured our impact through our meals saved. And yes, we've been around for just over 6 years now. We've rescued over 110 million meals from going to waste, which is the equivalent CO2e impact of about 53 or 55,000 around the world flights. So it's great to be able to, put some tangible comparisons towards that impact that we have. But our leading KPI and the way in which we measure our impact has always been meals saved. So the amount of food that we can prevent from going to waste, and this will always be a guiding figure for us. And what I think so important to highlight is that we're in this unique position in which our leading KPIs, our measurement of success, also directly correlates with the environmental impact that we have. So the more meals that we save, the better this is for the environment as well. And that's what's really exciting for me. In terms of other ways though in which we've measured our impact is we can also measure things through our indirect impact initiatives. So we're having a direct impact through the meals saved through our platform, but we also run a whole host of initiatives which are about inspiring and empowering people beyond our marketplace. Now, in the past 2 years, we've launched a date label campaign across Europe. And what this is seen is us collaborating with FMCG brands and whatnot from huge organizations the size of Unilever, Danone, Nestle, through to small challenger brands to communicate on pack that once food has gone beyond its best before date, we should look, smell, and taste food. So this has been, a great way for us to take our mission forward and allowed us to measure impact, as I say, not just through the meal saved through our marketplace, but also being able to measure these changes in behaviors through having further collaborations with other organizations. And I'll repeat, I think, what several of the other panelists have said today, which is this theme of collaboration, how important that is for all of us. to be working together to have a combined impact. It's not about working in silo.
Amazing, Jammie. And again, I love that you touched on different also metrics of impact, which is not only, user, I guess, yeah, they're not only, user related or, in terms of meal saved. So can you briefly tell us, and I'm going to try to combine basically two elements. So first, what's next, for Too Good To Go? You have now conquered the US. Again, without sharing anything too confidential, but what are the latest, exciting projects you're working on? And also, as you touched based on, collaboration, and I know you guys have been doing quite a lot also in the public affairs, and, you've been very active in, basically promoting and creating, a conversation with also governments and advocating, for, tackling really food waste. Can you tell us how has, if anything, has changed at the regulation level and worldwide, and actually how do you think this can actually positively impact our food system? I think you're muted, but now you've been unmuted. Here you go.
Perfect. Yeah, so I guess just going through what are the big future plans for ourselves, and it's all about creating further impact. We talked about the expansion plans. So for us, it will be continue to cement and grow our position within the US. We're now active across several cities throughout the US, and we've recently launched in Canada and Ireland as well. So in Canada, it will be again expanding across the country, and most recently we've just launched in Ireland. So we're now active in 2 cities across Ireland, which is super exciting for us. So we'll be continually growing Too Good To Go. And when we talk about the issue of food waste, it is a global issue. So for us, it's about growing our impact, growing our scale, but at the same time, for us, it's having that further impact in these indirect impact initiatives. I said so, bringing our date label campaign to new markets, expanding that even further. And then when we look towards the impact we're having within the policy space, that becomes incredibly exciting too. For us, we were heavily involved in COP26. And I think, we can look to some encouraging movements there with the Methane Pact, which was championed by President Biden. And what this sort of explores is around a 30% reduction in methane emissions by 2030. And the huge thing here to point out is the connection between food waste and methane emissions. So this is an encouraging sort of step towards this. And, I think the work that we've done around COP26 has elevated our profile within the public affairs space. As you pointed out, we most recently launched a petition in the UK, which was, calling on global governments to endorse Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 as a legally binding target. The fortuitous things that have happened from this, what we've seen is encouraging signs in Germany, where we've worked with politicians in the lead up to the federal elections back in September, and seen that the German federal government has now taken on policy ambitions within the food waste space. So for us, it's again, as I say, to go back, it's about keep expanding, keep having that impact, but again, making sure that we can sort of shake up our food system for some very, very necessary legislative change when it comes to food waste.
Amazing, Jammie. And again, I think it's incredible to see, what type of impact you guys are created, from an app to actually a physical label through even, influencing government. So thanks a lot again also for taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, and I'll see you soon also in London. So
thank you.
Great. And then now we're gonna move to our last speakers of today, which is Matías. Hola, Matías. Good night.
Hola, Alessio. How are you, man?
Very good. Thank you. So, well, Notco, can you tell us a bit more about Notco for everyone who's not familiar already with it? Notco is one of the unicorn actually company that made it also in our this year's FoodTech 500.
Yeah.
And
No, Alessio, well, you know us from the very beginning when we were nothing. So, you've been in this journey with me, since I think like 4 years. So, you know us from when we were like little kids and now we're unicorns. And so, yeah, no, basically, Notco is a company that has leveraged artificial intelligence to create food products faster, better, more accurate, and less costly than anyone else in the space. We've been super busy at trying to understand how to execute fast, how to move the needle fast, how to access the mass market with plant-based products. We've launched 5 different categories of products in 6 different countries. In only 4 years of commercial execution, we've raised $370 million. We have great investors in the company. And I think the most interesting thing is that we've, since the get-go, we decided to really understand, as I said, how to access the mainstream market with plant-based products. And it was about taste, and it was about price. It was about, distribution, channels, and partnerships. We partner up with Starbucks, with food and beverages. We partner up with, Burger King and Papa John's and all of that. And we started off in Latin America. We started in Chile, then to Argentina, then to Brazil, then to Mexico, then to the US, and then to Canada. We've reached 6,000 stores already in the US. We've been operating for a year now. The product has been, we launched Not Milk, which is a milk replacement, basically that tastes like milk. It's very fascinating because we thought there was a good hypothesis, right? So people were not happy with the product that they were, buying. And the number one reason why that was taste. And we thought, why, what's going on there? Like, what is the real reason? And when we got into the data, we understood that many of the people that, consumed animal-based milk or products in general, do not go to plant-based because they are disappointed. They went already. They tried something and they didn't like it, and they don't come back, right? So it was like, how do we turn these people that are drinking milk, regular milk, into non-dairy? And the reason why, or the solution that we proposed was like, let's do a very creamy, milky product that comes from plants. Like, let's call it Not Milk, and see what happens. And there's a lot of transition from people that, were disappointed with plant-based and are coming into Not Milk, and also people that just, thought Not Milk was a better alternative than what was out there in the sense of like oat milk or soy milk or almond milk, to which we think it's they're great solutions, but we can do more in the stage of the technology that we have today in the world. So anyway, it's been, a ride of 5 years. We are already, I'm based in New York, the headquarters are, moving here around, Latin America, the US, and everything. And now, yeah, you'll see more products coming to the US. You'll see more categories. You'll see more associations with big brands and QSRs, and offering kind of like the array of solutions that we can, because we're a cross-category company. We utilize that AI side, which is very interesting. They allow us to create tailor-made products for tailor-made solutions. So the way we see ourselves as well is a catalyzer of change, not only a product solution, but a brand solution for many brands as well, to elevate their own brands. The ones who do not know how to actually go to plant-based or turn their products into plant-based, we can do that fairly easy, also partnering up with them in a kind of like Intel Inside kind of way, which is, I think, fascinating, because it's something that has not been championed before in the food space.
Indeed, Matías, as you mentioned, we met in the very early days, and where I think, Giuseppe, which is actually the AI algorithm behind the platform that Matías and his team have built, was probably still, an idea, I guess. But just to piggyback on some of the things that you were saying, you've taken from the very beginning, a very techy approach, to actually making food. Can you tell us a bit more about, how actually the tech, behind your product or your platform, has evolved over the course of the last 5 years?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's an evolution, right? At the very beginning, we thought, one of the most tricky things in the food space was to actually formulate something that would be not only great at lab scale, but would be great after industrial trials, and after industrial productions. Molecules behave different. The physics of products behave different, and there's a huge gap between what you can do in kind of like a lab test and then an industrial trial, producing thousands and millions of tons, right? And so one of the very first approach for us was like, okay, R&D, when you actually looked really closely to big companies, basically R&D was 3 guys in a lab coat in an experimental kitchen doing trial and error and reading research papers of 1980s on how to apply soy to replace animal-based ingredients, and that was it. And that's why kind of like the food landscape was very crappy. The pinnacle of R&D in the last 20 years was a freaking Dorito, right? And that's where we actually said, okay, the problem maybe is not in the kind of like only in the mindset. Of course, the system is broken in many, many ways, right? But one of the biggest ways was technological and science-based. I mean, basically the tech and science was obsolete, was very, old school. And so we said, let's really create a technology that would allow us to formulate food products faster, right? And not only faster, but more clever, right? So it was like, okay, there are more than 300,000 species of plants in the world. We have no idea what they can do. We have no idea what, actually the actual products that we consume are, in terms of like, okay, what is the data that can describe actually what a milk is, what a piece of meat is, and so on. So what we decided to do is first understand food at a molecular level. Then we understand plant-based ingredients in the same way. And we decided to create this algorithm that you very well, called Giuseppe, basically, understands and creates or selects or allows us to understand which combination of plant-based ingredients should result in the same sensorial experience as a target product. Sensorial experience, nutritionals, blah, 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 right? And so Giuseppe kind of like, goes into different dimensions of data to really understand what is the underlying pattern between the molecular components in food and the human perception of taste, texture, smell, and color, right? So at the end of the day, you're trying to hack a little bit the system. You try to understand the human brain, and you understand, food at a very, 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 robust level. But that's not only, Giuseppe. Giuseppe started like that, and that's one of the biggest, and great achievements at the very beginning. But then building a company that is a very tech-based company allowed us to really create modules that are not only the formulator. We started to understand there were more problems to that. How to discover what probiotics can actually do. What are the taste, texture, smell, and colors that we could create with probiotics? So we routed, the metabolic system of probiotics to really understand what they can actually do. And there's so many, flavoring, right? So flavoring is a very big pain in the ass. I mean, you have the flavor houses and everything, and it's very old school how they work. It's a brief sending to them. They go to their library. They understand some of the flavors. They would ask you to actually, they will go into a round. They will, show you what they have. And they, in 1 week, they do the 80-20. And after that, there is not much improvement. So, the question was, is there any more that we can actually do? Can we go into, analyzing volatile, by volatile, understand, given a base of plant-based ingredients, what is the best, combination of molecules that can create the taste and aroma that we want? We could, and we are doing another module that works, in the flavor side, and we have exactly the same module that works on the texture side. So there's many things that we kind of like started in a very broad kind of way in an approach of artificial intelligence, and now we're getting, more specialized and specialized, and it's giving us the chance to work faster, and better and more accurate and produce better products.
Amazing, Matías. Again, the evolution of a technology of 5 years into 2 minutes. So that's amazing. Just to wrap it up, I know, and you mentioned also that you formed, very big actually partnerships with various corporations, the food industry, from QSR to ingredient companies. And as you know, some also of the other speakers, mentioned that collaboration is a big part of how they actually run the business. what would be the kind of biggest piece of advice that you would give, to fellow founders that are actually embarking on this journey of also forming, this type of partnerships, as the sort of Goliath, David and Goliath, analogy is always plays out.
Yeah, I understand that analogy. What I would recommend, I mean, listen, I think one thing that has really worked on Notco is a bit the culture that we created on a pretty bold statement, which was, we're running out of time. If you're running out of time, you can do amazing things, right? It's like going into the bathroom and having 3 pieces of toilet paper as opposed to a whole roll, right? You do amazing amount of things with those 3 pieces, right? And so this is exactly what I always mention. I mean, doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're a unicorn or you're raised a $200 million, round. Always act as if you didn't have anything and time is running out, right? So that's the way that allows you to create so much impact in such a short period of time. I mean, and that's the story about us. I think Notco elevated itself, maybe even more than competitors that were very ahead of us, because we did things maybe faster. We planned things to be leaner. We don't own manufacturing facilities. We operate in a way similar to Coca-Cola because we needed to understand ways to do things faster, right? So that's why I say, we're running out of time is one of the biggest and most important things in what the Notco culture actually stands for. And so, yeah, I mean, when you grow, you start getting more processes in between and decisions that are maybe falling through the cracks, and corporate world is starting to invade a little bit your startup because you're bringing people from the corporate world. You have people from Danone and Coca-Cola and, Kraft Heinz and this and that, and they come with a structure, right? But you need to make sure that everyone that comes in understands what you're in for, right? And if you put that, that statement in front of them of saying, we're running out of time, then, you see how naturally people start to evolve at a less, corporate world and more startup-y world.
Amazing, Matías, and I'm going to piggyback on actually your note about running out of time, as we are also running out of time and overrunning this webinar. Thanks a lot, Matías. Again, I know you're also very busy, but I'm so glad that you could join us and you could create such a big impact, with starting in 2013 at Stanford. Amazing. Thank you very much for everyone who have joined us. I'm going to just wrap up this sessions with, again, thanking so much the speakers who have joined us today. We all have, very busy schedules, and we couldn't also, made it so insightful without your input. So again, thanks for joining us. And just going to wrap it up saying that we're actually running some physical events again, thank God. Today, we're going to host a good chunk of the folks who have actually made it into the FoodTech 500 this year in our hub here in Barcelona. We're going to then move on the 3rd of March. We're going to fly to Milan to also introduce again the FoodTech 500 list there, and also host local companies. And we're going to finish off in London on the 16th of March with hosting again more local companies over there. To basically, again, celebrate the entrepreneurial world food tech talent. All these sessions will be recorded and then put live on YouTube channel. So if you cannot basically join us physically, which we understand given the current situation, you'll be able to still follow them, on our YouTube channel. So again, thanks a lot. And if you have any further questions about the FoodTech 500 or you want to engage with some of the companies, please drop us a line. And we will be happy to enable, any connections we possibly can to, again, better our food system for the good. Thank you.